Hello everyone and welcome to Winshuttle Transaction Advanced 2 training. I am Miia from ADSOTECH, your Winshuttle partner in the Nordics, and I'm here to guide you through our 3 training packages, Basic, Advanced 1 and Advanced 2. These packages are designed for new Winshuttle transaction users with the developer license. We are now in the Advanced 2 training package, which includes cell-based mapping, conditions, long texts, and making scripts available for the runner users. This is the second part of that package, and we will concentrate on making scripts more dynamic with if conditions. Let's dive in. Let's start from the default behavior of our scripts. By default, whatever we record needs to happen in that sequence when we run the script. So we have recorded 5 different screens, A, B, C, D, E. Those screens and the SAP fields in them need to come up in that order. So all the SAP fields within those respective screens need to be there every single time we run the script. And also all of these screens need to come up in SAP in this order, otherwise the execution will fail. Now with if conditions, we can change that behavior slightly. So we have still recorded screens A, B, C, D, E and some SAP fields within those screens. In some cases, the initial screen, screen A, might only appear if it's the first transaction that we are performing, meaning the first row of our Excel data. Some transactions in SAP simply work like this. When you go to a transaction for the very first time in that SAP session, it will ask for some additional information. It could be a company code or it could be something else. And then if during the same SAP session you go into that same transaction again, that transaction might actually remember the definitions that you gave on that first time and simply not give you that first screen at all, simply get you to the next step immediately. So in those cases, we need to put a condition around that first screen, which only happens if it's the first time you enter, and say that this will be performed only if it's the first transaction. That's a very specific case where you need a condition like that. More common examples are if conditions based on Excel data or SAP data. With some scripts, you want to update certain SAP fields, but only when a certain criteria is met. So if you are creating a document for company code 1000, then and only then with company code 1000, you want to enter data to SAP fields X, Y, and Z. Then you record these SAP fields X, Y, and Z, and you specify a condition around them. Individually or as a group, you specify a condition saying that perform these things, but only when my criteria is met, and your criteria is if my company code is 1000. That company code is probably in your Excel file, specified in your Excel file, so you can say that since my company code is in column B in my Excel sheet, your criteria, your if condition will say if Excel column B equals 1000. When that criteria is met, so the condition is true, we will actually perform the content of that condition. And the content was to put data to SAP fields X, Y, and Z. Now the data for those SAP fields X, Y, and Z could be coming from your Excel file, or they could be fixed values within the script. So you can map them in the regular fashion, or you can have them as fixed values. Completely up to you and the case that you're working with. But your if condition will specify when to actually do the update. So the update for those specific fields will not happen every single time the script is run. It will only happen in specific cases, and that specific case was when your column B, so your company code in Excel, is specified to be 1000. Another option is to base your condition on data in a specific SAP field directly. I prefer to use Excel data, but it is possible to also use SAP data directly. So you can say that my SAP field AB is here in this screen in my script. If that specific SAP field AB, if it equals to 123, then we will perform this part of the script. Now that part that we are referring to, it could be a specific update that goes into SAP. Again, it could be a fixed value or coming from Excel. We could be dealing with several screens that we need to go through, so possibly pop-ups even that happen in SAP when this certain SAP field has a specific value 123. Or it could be any number of things. But we can base the condition on data in an SAP field directly. Any of these conditions can deal with one SAP field, one data update going to SAP, or they could deal with a complete screen. They could be dealing with several screens. They could be dealing with just a couple of updates going to SAP, and when the condition is not met, not going to SAP. So the condition can be a very short one, or it can be a long one in regards to the content of the script and how big part of the script is conditionalized. Of course, you can have several conditions inside one script. Those conditions could be inside conditions, so they can be nested as well, or they could be just separate if conditions. All of these conditions rely on the fact that you actually know what's going to happen during the execution of your script. So, meaning that you will know what will happen in SAP. Are there certain pop-ups, for instance, coming up with certain combination of data? Or are there certain screens in SAP that we want to go through? We need to enter some extra data when there's this combination of data going in. So let's say we are creating materials in SAP, creating completely new materials in SAP. For certain material types, we want to enter into specific tabs within that material. So we can record going into those tabs and doing whatever needs to be done in those tabs. And then we are in the mapper, we can actually define conditions saying that we want to go to these tabs, but only when the material type is XYZ. So it's a matter of what happens in SAP or what we want to do in SAP, depending on data in Excel or data in SAP. Whenever we defined an if condition, we need to use the expert tab in the mapper. There's an if condition button that we can use to create these all kinds of different conditions. So we're using an Excel or SAP field to control whether to perform a specific part of our script. You have different logical operators that you can use to define your condition so that it meets your requirements at that point. Your condition could contain one update to one SAP field, or it could be several, or it could be one whole screen, or it could be several screens. You could conditionalize only an OK code in your script, and so on. You can also conditionalize a complete script. So putting a condition around your whole script means that whenever Winshuttle moves to the next row in Excel, it will check for the condition. If the condition is met, then we actually run the data from that Excel row to SAP according to the script. If the condition is not met, then that specific Excel row is skipped and Winshuttle will move on to the next one. If for that specific row the condition is met, then that row will be run to SAP. If first transaction and also if not first transaction conditions are also available, and those should be applied for cases where your initial screen in your transaction is different for the first record compared to the subsequent records. So again, the case where your SAP transaction has a different start for the first time you go into that transaction within an SAP session. And then the start is slightly different if you go in the second time during the same SAP session. Defining a condition, like I said, in the mapper, you need to be in the Expert tab. Select your rows, whichever those are in your script that you want to conditionalize. Then you click Condition. It's right there next to the loop button that we have used before. Then you get a pop-up window like this. Up top, you have your selected script rows, so start row, end row. There's also a possibility for an else row. So if you are conditionalizing a bigger portion of your script, it could be rows 10 to 20. Then maybe a part of that, maybe those rows actually contain the if portion and also the else portion. So you have a case where you want to do one thing if a condition is met, and in all the other cases you want to do something else. Then you select all those rows, click Condition, and over here in the pop-up you have start and end row specified, but then you can say what row starts the else portion. That else row needs to be inside your start and end row. So if I were to select rows 10 to 20, my else portion would start at row 16, let's say. Start row 10, end row 20, else row 16. It's not that often that I see people using if-else conditions. Normally we stick with simple ifs, but if-else is also a possibility, and it works for some cases very well. Alright, we have a radio button selection here. If first transaction, if not first transaction, if on SAP field, and if. Two options there in the middle grayed out, if on index field, if to verify text. Those are specific to GUI scripting recording mode, which we don't want to generally go to. So we're not going to be talking about that type of conditions right now. I already covered if first transaction, if not first transaction options. Those are very specific for certain transactions that have the difference in the beginning of the transaction. So not focusing on those either that much right now. We will be focusing on if and if on SAP field. Right here we have selected if, and that's the Excel data if condition. So that's selected. Then the actual condition that we are specifying is here on the bottom. Select column. That's an Excel column. Column A is selected. Operator contains is selected as well. So if my Excel column A contains the given value, so OK, then the condition is met and this selected portion of the script will be performed. When Winshuttle executes the script for one Excel row, of course during that execution it will check for the condition. If the condition is met, then it will perform the conditionalized part. When Winshuttle moves on to the next Excel row, it comes across the if condition again, and it will check if the condition is true for that row of Excel data. If it is, again, it will perform that part. And if it's not true, then Winshuttle will skip the part that's conditionalized and move on with the following steps. We have another very specific condition type as well. This is about not knowing when a pop-up or a screen is coming up in SAP. We know that there is a certain screen that might come up or it might not come up. But we cannot specify before we run the script whether the screen will be there for that specific row of Excel data or if it will not be there. We can deal with this type of situations with a condition that we call skip screen if not found. So it's a screen level condition. Over in our example here in the picture, we have again recorded 5 screens, A, B, C, D, E. But out of those screens, screen D does not always come up. Based on the data that we have in Excel, or even in the screens that we see in SAP, we cannot know whether screen D will come up. Whether it comes up or not is probably based on some SAP data that we have somewhere in SAP, but the data is not visible for us in our particular transaction. So we record our script so that we actually get screen D into that script as well. Since you don't know beforehand whether screen D will come up or not, you may have to record a few times before you get it. Fine. When you have it in your script and you're in the mapper, you can select your screen D and then define this skip screen condition. So we're talking about skipping a complete screen here. And this option should only be used if you're not able to define an explicit condition, so one of the previous ones that we were talking about, based on some Excel data, or based on some SAP data that we can see in the transaction. If that's not possible, then we can try and use skip screen if not found option. But this option cannot be found behind the condition button. We still need to be in the mapper and in the expert tab. First, we need to select our correct screen. So that's one of the blue lines that we have in our script in the expert tab. Once we have selected our correct screen, then we can click on properties on the right side of your screen. The blue vertical bar that you have there on the right side. When you click it, you will see an option called skip screen if not found. Simply tick that on, and then Winshuttle is able to skip over that screen if it doesn't find it, if it doesn't come up when executing the script. So Winshuttle will skip over that screen and continue with the rest of the script. And if it does come up, then Winshuttle is able to perform the steps that were recorded in that screen originally. This option should not be used if you have a script that was recorded with GUI scripting mode. and it cannot be used inside a loop either. Within a loop, we need to find some other means to get the same job done. Skip screen if not found is not an option within a loop. Here's an example of a case where skip screen if not found would be useful. Transaction TK11, creating conditions in SAP. Depending on what kind of conditions and validity periods you already have there in that transaction for your specific data, you might get a pop-up screen for overlapping validity periods. Before you run the script for a specific Excel row, you cannot know whether that overlapping validity periods pop-up will appear or not. And that creates a problem for your recording versus execution. What you want to do here is record a script where you actually have this screen, so overlapping validity periods. And then when you have it in the script, you can select it, again the blue row in your Expert tab, and specify that this screen should be skipped if it doesn't come up during the execution of the script. When you put that condition in and then run the script, Winshuttle is able to skip that screen if it doesn't come up, so it's able to get past it and deal with the rest of the script. Try to perform those following steps. And if the screen does come up, then Winshuttle is able to do whatever you recorded and told it to do within that screen. Let's take a look at this skip screen if not found option first. I'm going to be using the same script we had in the cell-based episode. So this would be my Excel template, and I have the script right here as well. Now, this is about FP50 transaction. Within SAP, in the FP50 transaction, some users get a small pop-up asking for a company code in the very beginning of FP50. And some users don't get that. That completely depends on the user's settings. Now, if a person without that pop-up window creates a script and gives it out to his colleague who does have the pop-up in his SAP, the script will fail when that other person runs it, because the script is not equipped to handle the pop-up window in the beginning. And when this other person runs the script, his SAP credentials will always bring up the pop-up. Now, if we reverse the situation and this person with the pop-up setting records the script and hands it out to his colleague who does not have the pop-up in his SAP, again, if nothing is done within the script to handle this scenario, again, the script will fail. My script right here was created by a user who has the pop-up. Now, my current user does not have the pop-up. Let's see what happens. I get an error message, no batch input data. Now, the error message itself does not really talk about the problem, and it's not self-explanatory what the problem is. So we could try to run the script with step-by-step and see where the run crashes. But since I have already investigated the issue, I will simply show you how to fix the issue. Now I know that the script was created by a user that has the pop-up in the beginning, and now my user does not have that. That pop-up is this very first screen right here. It's asking for a company code right there. I will select that screen, so the blue row there in the beginning. Go to Properties. Skip screen if not found. Great. I can close my properties, save my script, and get out. Now, when I run my script, the script runs through just fine, and my log message says document was posted. So it was a simple case of the script being now able to skip over that pop-up in the beginning, so the pop-up for the company code, and being able to move on to the next steps, even without that pop-up window in the beginning. Now, if I were to change my settings for my SAP user, I will run the script one more time. Again, the script was able to post my document because the pop-up is still in the script. If a user without the pop-up uses the script is able to skip that pop-up and continue with the following steps. If a user with the pop-up runs the script is able to handle the pop-up and then move on to the following steps. So if I'm now in SAP and I go to FP50, my initial screen is this pop-up, and previously I did not have this pop-up. So right now I would have to give a company code before I actually get into FP50, and if I change my settings again, get out from FP50, and go back in, you will notice there is no pop-up. So that's the difference. Alright, that's just one example where you might need skip screen if not found option. Now let's move on to the other type of if conditions. Specifically, let's take a look at an example of if on Excel column type of an if condition. So an if condition based on Excel data that we have. Let's use the same template and same script that we already have here. What I would like to do with my template and script is I don't like S's and H's for my debit and credit. I would like to be able to write debit or credit as words here, not S and H. So I would like my headline to be something like that. So debit and credit as words are the actual options that I want to be able to use here in my Excel template. So these would be something like this. This is what I want my Excel file to look like. But if I leave it like this and I start running my script, of course I will get a failure out of my script because debit and credit, as they are written here, are not appropriate SAP values. SAP understands S and H. What I want my script to do is, if my Excel row here says debit, I want the script to put in the data and use S as my indicator for debit and credit in SAP. And that can be achieved with if conditions. So over here, I'm inside my loop. I have my debit and credit indicator right here. I want S and H to be the exact values that go to SAP. Of course, those are the SAP appropriate values. So those need to be fixed. I will change this to be a fixed value. H is one value. And then I need another one as well. Copy and paste. I have another indicator here. That would be value S. Of course, I cannot just leave it like this. This would mean that when the script is run, it's first going to put in an indicator of S on a specific row, and then directly change it to H, and then do the rest of the values. For the next row in Excel, it will actually do the exact same thing. So I would end up with a document that has only credit lines on it, and that's really not good. A document like that will never go through because debit and credit won't match. So I want to put in if conditions. I want to tell the system when do I want this S value to be the one that goes to SAP. So selecting that row, condition. If my, what is the column that I use in Excel? I have my Excel file open, I can check it from here. Well, it happens to be Excel column H. When my Excel column H here, for each row, if it gives a value of debit, then I want the S to be the value that goes into SAP. So that would be column H. If it equals due to debit, then this condition is true, and what will happen is this. The fixed value of S will be going into SAP as the debit credit indicator. Same thing for the other one. Also conditionalize that. Same thing. If my Excel column H equals to credit, then what will happen is this. So if my Excel says credit, the line in SAP will be marked with an H for credit. And that's it. If I back out and save, let's check our Excel file. Yes, these values are here. And we run the script. Again, document was posted. You should notice that the document number has changed, so the message there is completely brand new. So a new document was posted in SAP. Of course, I could go to SAP and check what the document looks like, but I don't really have to. I know that the document was created, so my if conditions were working just fine. If I didn't have the if conditions, they weren't working fine, then first of all, my debit and credit would not match for the document, and Winshuttle might have tried to put in these particular values to SAP, and SAP cannot handle debit or credit type of values. SAP will only handle H and S. So that's one simple example how to use if conditions. This time it was a matter of wanting to change the input on our Excel template and therefore making the form that we have here more user-friendly. Many users don't like the H and S as values, but we prefer to write down debit or credit. Or we might even want to have two separate columns for the amount and have debit amount here on the left and credit amount on the right, using, for instance, H and I columns here. Something like this. We could also do this with simple if conditions in the script. We just say that if our H column has a value greater than 0, then we will take the value from there and put it to SAP with the debit indicator, S. And if I column is greater than 0, then we actually take that value, put it to SAP, and fix in a value of H as the debit credit indicator as well. So that's also possible. But these examples are about making your Excel more user-friendly for the end user to fill in. Your case for using if conditions could also be about putting in a tax code, but only for specific accounts, or only putting in a reference for certain type of documents, or whatever else options you might have. It could be about the currency key, or it could be about company codes, etc. For specific company codes, you want to use specific currencies or something similar. You could set that up with if conditions inside the script. That concludes the second part of our Advanced 2 package for Winshuttle transaction. So far we know what cell-based mapping means and how to use if conditions. Please join me in the next part, which will cover the use of long text fields. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining.